Hey, hello, how are you? My name is Enrique Palafox and I'm here with Dacre Stoker. Dacre, how are you in these beautiful times of the year? This,
Halloween, baby. You know, Harleen, as they say, Halloween was the home of Halloween is Ireland, but Dracula was born there. the green, wearing the green shirt.
definitely. Good,
Yeah,
good, good. So, very busy time for you.
busy time for me. Lots of people want to talk about Bram Stoker, Dracula.
Mm.
We want to talk about our band of heroes that they're certainly not in Ireland right now, and they're not in Mexico. They're
Yeah.
stuck in Varna waiting for the ship, the Tsar Katerina, to arrive. They think it's coming in Varna, but they soon learn something a little bit different, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. Let me translate this and start right now. Bienvenidos, nuestra semana 26. Estoy aquí con Dacre Stoker desde Carolina del Sur. Estamos platicando ya en la recta final, nuestra semana número 26. Y justo estamos viendo cómo nuestros héroes, como dice Dacre, bueno, pues están parados en el puerto de Varna, ¿no? Y esperando a que pase el Serena Catarina, ¿no? Para ya llegar y echar las manos al conde Drácula. Ok, Dacre.
So we've got a lot of text to talk about, and here's what I recommend we do. I'm going to go through fairly quickly and choose out some of the most important lines of this section and certain sections of dialogue because there's some interesting insight, like where, once again, where Bram got these ideas and some very famous parts of it. But essentially, what we have is the chess match, as you and I have talked about for this whole book, and it's like the detective story that Bram is writing as the Count, band of heroes, with Mina kind of in the middle, trying to figure out who's got the upper hand, who's hiding from the other one, who's got the ability to understand what the other's doing. And the common person is the hypnotic ability to get into Mina's head that connects the two. And this was a science that the people in the Victorian era were really considering as a science, not just a crazy thought. Mesmerism was this thing, Yeah, it was, yes, connections. And so it's interesting that Bram is using this as a literary technique because people believed it was real. And once again, we have this part whereas we're discussing her, she says, "Oh, I want my phonograph. I want to be able to do my typing." And then Jonathan says, "Yes, in a great way, she's changed over the weeks. Her hypnotic state is different. Something is happening. It's not a well-defined science. They're
Yeah.
observing her and
Yeah.
they're figuring out she's telling them what she hears, which is obviously the Count in a ship and the water's lapping up against the wooden hull. But they're worried. They don't know what this exact means. Is it hurting her? And what I think about Enrique is, the famous scenes in Lord of the Rings when Frodo puts on the ring to get a vision. He is vulnerable himself because if he puts it on, he
Yeah.
can be seen. And
Yeah.
that same thing goes on with this two ways of one is reading the other's mind at the same time.
Actually, I'm thinking right now there's a curious parallel with modern technology, with GPS, with knowing where you are, no, that kind of stuff that we are so related right now. Bram was ahead of that 100 years
Yeah, like
ago, no?
if you use your cell phone to call for help, the
Yeah,
other guys know where you are.
yeah.
So it's
It's like
ESP. Yeah.
Ok, let me translate this. Estamos ya en un periodo muy interesante porque, bueno, pues estamos viendo el juego de ajedrez que tanto hemos platicado durante todo este periodo, donde por un lado Drácula pretende llegar a su castillo y por el otro lado los héroes lo quieren atrapar antes. Entonces, por un lado vemos, bueno, esta lucha, ¿no? A ver quién será el mejor. Entonces, lo que dice Dacre es que el punto que lo une es el hipnotismo, que finalmente eran una de estas ciencias que se creían, ¿no? En ese entonces que realmente había conexiones con personas y ese tipo de cosas. Y estamos hablando que hay un paralelismo con la tecnología actual de GPS y llamadas telefónicas para llamar ayuda, ¿no? Entonces, ok, Digger.
So here's two lines I want you to translate. So, first of all, on October 27th, Mina Harker is in her trance. She says, the lapping waves and rushing water. The waves are faint. Okay? So say that. Translate that.
Estamos ya en la parte donde Mina está narrando lo que ella escucha, entonces sobre todo es en este periodo son las olas cómo van golpeteando suavemente, ¿no? Ya y estas se van desvaneciendo. Ok.
So the very next sentence, Enrique, it's just as you said. The telegrams from London have been saying the same. No further report of the ship. So you have Mina's ESP telling the same story that the modern technology of the telegram. So it's comparing exactly the same. Those days the telegram was the cell phone. And it's
Yeah.
like neither one is being able to tell what's going on. And Van Helsing says, I'm very anxious and told me just now that he fears the Count is escaping us.
Y aquí bien interesante porque se presta este paralelismo con el telégrafo, ¿no? Porque, bueno, finalmente, como dice Dacre, el telégrafo era el teléfono celular de ese entonces, ¿no? Entonces, durante días no se reporta ningún movimiento, hasta que Van Helsing se preocupa y dice, creo que ya nos han visto la cara. Ok.
And remember at one of our last talks, I mentioned about the books in the London Library that Bram Stoker found by a doctor, a medical doctor, about trance sleepwalking, and somnambulism.
Ujú.
And he writes this right now. Souls and memories can do strange things during trance. Souls and memories can do strange things during trance. It's almost like he's an expert that he knows this, but he's obviously read this in the books. And he's transferring it obviously. So it's like, we've got to be careful of Mina. We don't really understand the soul of the person, the memory of the person can do strange things.
Aquí está algo muy interesante porque, bueno, estamos hablando de las almas y las memorias pueden hacer cosas muy extrañas, ¿no? Esa es una de las frases que continuamente está repitiendo porque, bueno, precisamente en este periodo del hipnotismo no se sabía qué es lo que sucedía, entonces se asumía precisamente de una manera muy extraña que tanto el alma, ¿no? Como las memorias, ¿no? Pues actuaban por cuenta propia.
So finally, on October 28th, they get the news that the Tsarina Katrina is reported entering Galatz at 1 today. So they realize they've been outsmarted. Somehow the Count got away. We'll understand why in a moment. But this gives all of the band of heroes. They said, we were sort of expecting some kind of something strange. You know, we didn't think it was going to be that easy. But they had to jump into action. And what's interesting is you see Lord Godalming, you know, the rich guy, the Lord, he grows very pale and sat breathing heavily, like, has he been defeated? But Quincy Morris, the American, tightens his belt with a quick movement, which I knew so well in our old wandering days meant action. So Morris is like showing what Bram thinks about the Americans. Yeah, come on, let's go, bring it on. Whereas Godalming is thinking, okay, more of that British reserved. He's ready to go. He's not shying away, but Godalming is going to pull out the money. He's going to go and figure his contacts. He's going to rent a boat, all the things. But Morris is like, I'm ready to go. Let's go. Come on. Let's go.
Like a motor.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next question they ask is, okay, I guess we got to take a train to get to Galatz. And sure enough, Mina comes out of her trance just like this, and she tells them, oh, the next train is at 1:30 today.
Yeah.
And they go, wait a sec, how'd you know that? Once again, she is the glue. She is the one with the details. She's the smart mother that keeps everyone together. I study these things. This is my business. I know what I'm doing.
Wow.
But they do have to go to Budapest. So when you and I produce our map for our friends, there's no direct train because it's the Danube Delta. You can't go from Galatz up. You've got to go all the way to Bucharest, up to the west, and then back up into the mountains.
Yeah. Ok. Vemos aquí muy interesante porque, bueno, de repente, tras estar esperando en el puerto de Varna, ¿no? Que pasara el barco donde venía el conde, de repente, 2 días después, a través del telégrafo, reciben la noticia de que el barco ya pasó, ¿no? Y se fue de lejos y que, bueno, pues literal ellos fueron engañados, ¿no? Entonces aquí es donde dice Dacre que, bueno, son las reacciones distintas. Por un lado vemos a Lord Godalming, que un poco, no es que se canse, ¿no? Pero bueno, sí, está exhausto, ¿no? Y es mucho más reservado y está un poco como molesto, ¿no? Porque las cosas no suceden. Pero por el otro lado vemos a un Quincy Morris que se convierte en el motor de todo esto y como buen norteamericano, que es la visión de Bram, dice, wow, este es el motor y este va para adelante, ¿no? Entonces, él describe cómo se faja el cinturón del el doctor Seward, ¿no? Que en un gesto muy conocido, porque recordemos que ya habían actuado juntos, entonces en un gesto muy singular, ¿no? Entra a la acción y va para adelante. Entonces, finalmente dice Dacre que esta mina, ¿no? Que regresa de su trance, ¿no? Y en este regreso de trance, bueno, pues ella sabe todo, porque sabemos que ella va un paso adelante, entonces ya traía la tarea hecha, entonces les dice, no, tenemos que tomar este tren y demás. Los otros, ¿cómo sabes tanto? Dice, tú, tranquilo, yo sé mi negocio un poco. Bien.
So they now figured out if the Count didn't come to Varna and went to Galatz, that the Count must have understood that Mina has been reading his mind and has the guys ready to get him in Varna, so he deflects to Galatz. Had he not known that, he wouldn't have any reason to divert to Galatz. So they say the Count must have sent her his spirit to read her mind.
Ujú.
Now they're beginning to show that they understand the two-way mind reading. Yeah, exactly.
Ya.
So they say now he must make his biggest effort to escape us. At present, he want her not. So he's not trying to get Mina. They've realized this is an all-out effort to get back to the castle. And this is when obviously things are going to get much more serious. And they start talking about his background, which I find very interesting because now here's one more science, Enrique. And I want to know what you think about this. And it came into the story in the beginning, and it's coming in back again. The whole idea of the man brain versus the child brain, the whole idea of Lombroso and phrenology, that was again a science back in the days of people's physical characteristics
Ujú.
showing that they had more criminal side of them. So physically, you look at somebody and you can tell, this man looks like a criminal. He must be acting like a criminal, as
Ujú.
opposed to the more refined look of people. Oh, they look wonderful. They couldn't be bad at all. And this was something that was again a big science. And so they're equating the criminal mind and the child mind of Dracula because he has that appearance. He's not the good-looking guy like Bela Lugosi that you and I know because we're
Ya,
all about Bram's Dracula.
ya.
But they're now thinking they have the man brain. Dracula has the child brain. They're going to be able to outsmart him. They have the confidence that they can get him because of that.
Yeah, and then again, you have this game match because sometimes the roles are interchanged. Sometimes this child mind of Dracula is best is his best resources.
Yeah, he's more of an animal, you see? And animals have instinct.
Yeah,
And you
more
know you
primal.
know well because you have all these dogs,
Yeah,
and when an animal is injured, it likes to seek refuge
yeah,
and it will
very
go home.
primal.
And the same thing with Dracula. He is injured, he is in peril, he's got to go home. And so they think because of that, he's got cunning, but he doesn't have intelligence like a human. So that's why they think, okay, if he's in Galatz, where's he going? And then they start deciphering the maps and figuring out he's got to go here, here, or here to get back up to. They know where the castle is because Jonathan was there. How's he going to get there? And they start deciphering all these different techniques of transportation.
I really like your analogy because yeah, he is retreating like a hurt dog, hurted dog, no?
Yeah, or a hurt, a hurt wolf or anything
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
And there was also reference to someone of the Dracula family
Hmm.
who had fought the Turk and been injured in battle and lost many men, but he came back. He retreated back to the point where he left his fellow citizens out dying. Now, Hans de Roos thinks this is Michael the Brave.
Mm.
That this again, Bram has merged some
Hmm.
of the historical truth that Michael the Brave, who came, years after Vlad the Impaler, because
Yeah.
there wasn't seemed to be a battle in history that Vlad the Impaler did that and came back, but Michael the Brave had battles where he had to retreat to come back and left his people to die in the battleground.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Let me translate this. Estamos hablando de, bueno, pues este espíritu infantil, bueno, más bien esta mente infantil que de repente tiene el conde. Hay un paralelismo, dice Dacre, muy interesante con los animales que están lastimados, ¿no? Cuando salen huyendo a toda costa, ¿no? A pesar de que tengan un instinto, a pesar de que sean muy violentos, llega un momento que si están lastimados, bueno, pues tienen que salir corriendo y escapar, que eso es justo lo que está pasando al conde, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, en ese sentido, ¿no? Pues él está corriendo hacia sus lares y, bueno, tratando de llegar ahí, mientras se da cuenta de que, bueno, por el otro lado los héroes lo están leyendo a través de Mina, entonces ahí está tratando de bloquear todo lo que se pueda para poder llegar a buen puerto. ¿Ok?
So the band of heroes are finally arriving to Galatz, and they've got to understand, what are we dealing with? Is he on the ship? Is he off the ship? And now we begin to it's almost like we're reading a Sherlock Holmes story,
Yeah.
because they end up going and finding out that Mackenzie and Steichoff are the agents of the London firm Hapgood. And
Yeah.
they bribe the guys to get onto the ship to talk to the captain of the Tsar Katrina. And you know what the captain's name is, Enrique? Donaldson. This to me is a nod
Mm-hmm.
to Thomas Donaldson,
Awesome.
who
Mm-hmm.
was the friend of Walt Whitman
Mm.
and his lawyer, who Bram became very good friends with over all of his visits. I have seen in my cousin's household letters from Mr. Thomas Donaldson. And Donaldson
Yeah.
is also the man that Whitman gave
Yeah.
the Abraham Lincoln research notes to Donaldson to give them to Mr. Stoker. When Bram Stoker went over to America,
Wow.
he gave in return his Dracula manuscript to Mr. Donaldson.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's one of those things. And the other thing is, this guy's talking with a Scottish accent.
Yeah.
And Bram was writing the story
Yeah.
when he was in Cruden Bay, Scotland. And so he's using the Scottish dialect that a Scottish captain would speak with. And once again, as you have pointed out many times, the fog is what allowed the Count to control this weather, to hide them, and to push this ship silently and hiddenly instead of going to Varna, going to Galatz. So once again, Bram is using the tactics that Dracula learned in the Sholomonts to hide almost the cloaking device. Exactly. And Donaldson keeps saying, it was the most amazing thing. The wind kept pushing us, but the cloud was with us. I've never seen anything like it. Yeah. He said, the Romanians on the ship, they kept wanting to throw this box overboard because they knew there was something wrong. I wouldn't let them.
It's important to understand that the role that Bram had as a manager of the Elysium Theater was very important because he traveled around many places and know a lot of people because it was like being, I don't know, like being a big star right now in Hollywood, because theater in those days were the most important entertainment and he was in the best place to be. I mean, he was in London at the peak of the Victorian era. So
Yeah,
I mean, he was like a very big producer of Hollywood. So he
yeah,
managed to know a lot of people, a lot of writers, and a lot of no.
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. He was the center of it all, and his boss was the big rock star of the time, Henry Irving. So yeah, he's in the middle of it all.
Ok. Bueno, y aquí finalmente lo que estamos viendo es ya la parte donde, bueno, vemos como Bram Stoker, todo lo que fue el gerente de teatro, ¿no? Lo ayudó precisamente a viajar por todo el mundo y conoció a muchas personas. Y una de las personas que conoció es Donaldson, que es justamente a lo mejor un guiño que pone Bram al capitán del barco en la novela, que resulta ser que era el abogado y amigo de Mark Twain, que recordemos que Mark Twain era muy amigo de Bram Stoker, por esto que estábamos hablando, ¿no? Estos viajes que tuvo Bram por todos lados, ¿no? Y por la importancia que tuvo su papel, bueno, pues conoció a muchas personas y una de esas personas fue esta persona, Donaldson, que aquí lo vemos otra vez en otro guiño.
So what they discovered after talking to Captain Donaldson was
Ujú,
that the box was taken off by this company. This man, Emmanuel Hildesheim,
yeah,
this Jewish guy, was the agent to take care of this. And between the investigations of Homewood and the other guys, they found that an address for Mr. Hildesheim and Bergenstrasse 16 was the address. Of course, they went there and they found that there was a letter from, once again, Mr. DeVille, the
yeah,
devil from
yeah,
London. Same guy that you and I have talked about,
yeah,
hiding as the devil. But then also the man in charge was this guy Petrov Skinsky, who we find out later is dead in the churchyard. So it's obvious, something is wrong. That the count is doing something that is obviously he needs the blood because he hasn't drank for a while, and the body has been found inside the churchyard of St. Peter's in Galatz. So they kind of come home now, and they have no definite conclusion. They know the box is not here; it's somewhere in water. With heavy hearts, we come home to the hotel to Mina. But when they get home, they explain to her, "Hey, we've got to get some maps. We've got to, figure out a plan." And sure enough, what Mina does is present them with the plan. Here she is, the victim, but she's got her act together. She says Count Dracula's problem is he
yeah,
has to get back to his place.
yeah.
He must be brought back by someone. He cannot go by himself. So now what we do is we go through this methodical and
Hmm,
scientific approach.
hmm.
And I want you to talk about that because you and I have talked about your thesis for Dracula, and it sounds like it's very similar. This story has a lot of moving parts and it's got to be organized. And in the same way, Mina is able to remember she's the lady who's been keeping the typewriting, phonograph notes, organized by her brain, the train schedules. So she's figured out her first time ever to Romania, but with the map and with her knowledge, how this count is going to, the possibilities, the different routes this count is going to take to go all the way up the eastern border of the country between Moldavia and the Carpathian Mountains back up to the castle as we now know on Mount Israel.
This is very important because, as you well said, Mina is not acting as a secretary, which was expected from her because of her role, because of the position, because of the time of the novel. But she's acting as a planner. She's acting way ahead of everyone, even Van Helsing. So she has a special connection with Dracula, and she use it in the favor of the hero. So for me, that is very important because as you well know, whenever you need to write whatever work, you need to be very organized and be very constant in I don't know, analyzing everything, and that is what Mina does in this part of the novel.
Yeah. You want to translate?
Yep. Aquí tenemos una parte interesante, ¿no? El cerebro de Mina, como dice Dacre, que funciona de una manera muy particular, porque, bueno, finalmente, cuando ellos saben, los héroes que han sido sobrepasados por Drácula, Mina es la que tiene la solución, ¿no? Y estamos hablando de que Mina, particularmente, tiene un cerebro, pues, que es superdotado, ¿no? Porque no es la secretaria de la cual ella inclusive habla de ser en algún punto del libro, sino que en realidad se convierte en una planner y esa planner pues es una persona que va un paso adelante, ¿no? Y lleva absolutamente todos los pormenores para llevar a cabo una buena ejecución, ¿ok?
So here's her methodical way of thinking. She says he must be going back to his refuge of his castle. Is it by road, by rail, or by water? She goes, if it's by road, there are endless difficulties, especially
Yeah.
leaving the city, because
Yeah.
there are people. People are curious. They investigate. He's got to stay in the box because it's daytime. They may open the box. He'll be destroyed. Or there may be customs officers and tax officers who will want to get paid by the Slovaks for the box. His pursuers might follow, and this is the greatest fear. Mm-hmm. And in order to prevent his being betrayed, he has repelled even me. So now it's going to be hard to find him. If we go by rail, there's no one in charge of the box. It's just this may not be good.
Yeah.
True, he might escape at night, but why could that be? If left in a strange place with no refuge that he could fly to, that is not what he intends, and he does not mean to risk it. By water. Here is the safest way in one respect, but with most danger in another. On the water he is powerless, except at night. Even then he can only summon the fog and the storm and the snow and his wolves. But were he wrecked, the living water would engulf him, helpless, and he would indeed be lost. He could have the vessel drive to land, but if it were unfriendly land where he was not free to move, his position would be desperate. We know from the record, that's her mesmerism, he must be on the water. So what we have to do is figure out what water it is.
Ya. Ok, y aquí vemos a Mina precisamente desarrollando el plan del que hablábamos, ¿no? Este plan muy detallado, porque empieza a analizar, bueno, ¿qué pasa si se va por tierra? ¿Qué pasa si se va por tren? ¿Qué pasa si se va por agua? Entonces, por tierra empieza a analizar, bueno, todas las problemáticas que pudiera tener el conde, sobre todo los gitanos, ¿no? Que si pasan aduanas, que si le abren, no, en los oficios para ver qué es lo que tienen adentro, ese tipo de cosas. Entonces, lo analiza muy bien. Por el otro lado, analiza también el irse por tren, pero bueno, sabe que la caja iría sola, lo cual lo pone en peligro, pero por el otro lado también dice que el agua es la manera mucho más rápida de llegar por allá, ¿no? Entonces, en ese sentido, todo bien, pero bueno, ¿qué pasaría también si se hunde, ¿no? La caja, ¿no? Llegase a hundir, bueno, pues el conde está desesperado. Entonces, aquí lo que vemos es a una Mina, ¿no? Desarrollando absolutamente todos los planes, desmenuzando todo, pues para tener un plan de acción muy importante.
So just at the end of the statement, there's a map that they're looking at. Now, I know Bram Stoker had 3 maps, and we'll show you one of them at some time. We've actually showed you in some of our designs another one. But I believe he used a different map for the end of the story. And what Mina figures out, she says, of course, it may not be either the Sereth or the Pruth River, but we may possibly investigate further. Now, of these two, the Pruth is more easily navigated, but the Sereth is at Fundu, joined by the river Bistrica, which runs up the Borgo Pass. The loop it makes it manifestly as close to Dracula's castle as can be got by water. Now, you and I know, Enrique, that Dracula's notes actually have the note that says River Bistrica is joined by Sereth or Bistrica at Strasha. And here's the lines of longitude and latitude. So with this map, Bram is sitting here doing the same thing that Mina is doing, figuring out the
Yeah.
route, the possible route. And Van Helsing says, just as you said earlier, Dr. Van Helsing said, our dear Madam Mina is once more our teacher, not our secretary, our teacher. As you said, her eyes have been where we were blinded. Now we are on the track once again, and this time we may succeed. Our enemy is at his most helpless. Goldeming says, okay, I'll get the launch. I'll get these horses. So luckily, Mr. Morris and Mr. Goldeming have money with them. So they have the ability to rent a boat, get horses, and start their approach up to the up to the castle. And what is interesting is we learned something. Dr. Seward says, I think I better go with Quincy. We have been accustomed to hunt together. Now that's one of these little teeny little things that Bram puts in, that Quincy Morris and Seward, and I think Holmwood, used to go hunting together somewhere in the world, and they are good together. You know, like a good hunting partner is really important.
Yeah.
So Seward and Quincy go together. Goldeming goes with Harker, and then of course we have this big decision by Van Helsing to take Mina, and they're going to go in the train to Budapest, and they're going to follow up all the way to Bystrica and come into the Borgo Pass the same way that Jonathan Harker did at the beginning of the story. And we will illustrate that with a map to help you guys see that at some time.
Justo lo que dice Dacre tiene que ver con que nos contaba que él tiene acceso a 3 de los mapas que utilizó Bram para ver esto, porque justo lo que sucede en esta parte de la novela, donde Mina es sumamente detallada, ¿no? Y precisamente traza las coordenadas perfectas, tanto de los ríos que se van juntando, ¿no? Y que llegan hasta el pasaje de Borgo, ¿no? Y que están claramente bien ilustrados. Bueno, pues esos mapas son mapas que el mismo Bram Stoker utilizó y que claramente los tiene igual de bien trazados. Entonces, otra vez, como dice Dacre, el trabajo que hace Mina, bueno, pues el trabajo que hizo Bram en términos generales para plantear, ¿no? Con absoluto realismo todo esto y estas locaciones en esta persecución increíble. Okay.
So one more final thing that I just loved reading this little part to you, because you and I have talked, Enrique, about analyzing the Dracula notes, and when you just imagine, as we have done in our design, Bram Stoker's desk, and you've got the map in front of you, you've got the Dracula notes, and then he's writing his story. So just imagine this, and hopefully you get the same feeling I did. He says, regarding our plans, we finally decided that Mina's guess was correct, and that it was any waterway was chosen for the Count's escape back to the castle, that the Sereth and then the Bystrica at its junction would be the one. We took it that somewhere around the 47th degree north latitude would be the place chosen for the crossing the country between the river and the Carpathians. We have no fear in running at good speed up the river at night. There's plenty of water. So this is exactly one of those notes. We see 47th north latitude, and this is the place very close to Mount Israel. So it's really cool to see that, and that's where we are now, with the two guys going up in the ship, the guys on the horses, and not only 2 horses, but they have the money in the sense to have 4 extra horses for the horses to get tired. In the meantime, Mina is traveling with Van Helsing, which is very risky, because the closer she gets to the Count and to the castle, the more effective she is. And they realize it's a big risk. You're absolutely right. But she said, I'm willing to take this risk. And Van Helsing says, don't be silly. We have to take this risk. We're in God's hands. We're fighting the devil. Our souls are at risk, yes, but it's worth it. We have to stop this. We cannot let this creature continue.
Ya. Y bueno, estamos ya en el pasaje muy emocionante donde se ha dividido la partida se ha dividido en 3. Por un lado tenemos a Quincy, a Seward y a Lord Goldman, ¿no? Que bueno, claramente ya sabemos que ellos han tenido experiencias anteriores de caza, ellos se conocen bien y demás. Todos son buenos compañeros de cacería, entonces ellos van por un camino. Por el otro lado tenemos a Jonathan, ¿no? Que se va precisamente con Goldamin, perdón. Ellos dos se van por el río. Y por el último lado tenemos a Van Helsing, que se va con Mina, ¿no? Los cuales, bueno, pues llevan un gran riesgo, porque como dice Dacre, conforme más se acerca al conde Drácula, bueno, pues el dominio de este sobre Mina, pues es mucho más poderoso. Entonces, ella dice, bueno, pues no importa, a pesar de esto, yo me arriesgo y voy. Entonces, ahí van los tres, ¿no? En este detallado trabajo de investigación que hizo Bram para trazar las coordenadas exactas de las locaciones, ¿no? Tenemos con un realismo absoluto a las tres partes corriendo por los tres lados más naturales donde el conde podría estar llegando. Y ahí es justo donde estamos.
So I don't know if we missed this part, or if it's something you translated I didn't understand, but I wanted to ask you about your analysis for your PhD on Dracula. You said it was very difficult to arrange everything, much like Mina was arranging her analysis of what the Count had done and where he's going to go. Do you want to did you talk about that, or do you want to talk about that now and how you saw this part of the story?
No, I mean, it's only a reference because for me, this part, when Mina took the time to develop this planning, it's very important because for me was kind of a similar experience. Try to organize everything, try to be very methodical because in the academic studies you need to be very precise. You cannot leave alone some details, and that is what precisely Mina does when the men they are not lost, they are not uh, but I mean the brain that at this point is Mina, which is very important because it is not that important in the moment of the Victorian era. The women were left aside,
Yeah.
and we've been talking about how Mina is a very female, a very powerful female character, very, very, very contemporary. So in that
Well,
way,
yeah, as very much like Bram's mother,
yeah,
who was a strong woman who did
yeah,
lectures on how to prove somebody criminally insane, the education of the deaf and dumb, the plight of women in workhouses. I think Bram was raised by a very strong woman. I think the sisters were probably treated, you know, as strong women themselves. Matilda being the older one,
mhm,
um, and so what I think you see is Bram Stoker has a great respect for women, and he's writing about one of them in a way that shows she rises above these men. And
yeah,
and you're right, it's not like they're stupid at this point,
yeah,
but when people are under stress, you
mhm,
don't always make the best
yeah,
decision. And
yeah,
these men like Quincy, he's ready to go. Where's the fight? They're all, but
yeah,
you need to somebody to be cool and calm and
yeah,
thoughtful, and that's what she is, even though she is under stress, being turning into a possessed vampire,
yeah.
but she is able to be the glue that holds it together to provide the information. So to all you women out there, you know, Bram Stoker was an original feminist, and
Definitely,
it really was helpful to the cause.
definitely, because it's the most important character in the novel. I
You know,
mean,
it
Dracula
is. Go ahead.
is the one who is very popular, but in a character, Mina is way most important than even Van
Well,
Helsing.
let's leave our listeners with this thought for next week, okay? And it's like a game. If you had to say, whose story is this really about? Is it about Dracula? Is it about Van Helsing? Is it about Jonathan? Is it about Mina? Mm-hmm. So that should be the closing thought. Think about it. And let's discuss more next week when this thing reaches a head. Okay, man?
Yeah, wonderful. Vemos aquí, bien interesante, porque Dacre nos deja con una pregunta muy interesante, porque bueno, estamos aquí preguntándonos quién es el personaje más importante, ¿no? Y Dacre cuestiona, bueno, para todos nosotros deberíamos de quedarnos pensando esta semana, ¿esta historia de quién es? ¿Es la historia de Drácula? ¿Es la historia de Van Helsing? ¿Es la historia de Jonathan? ¿O es la historia de Mina? Que Mina, bueno, finalmente, como dice, es lo que une todo, es el pegamento de todo, porque bueno, bajo el estrés en los que están todo el mundo, pues Mina es la que se sobrepone, es la que va un paso adelante, es la que está proponiendo las cosas. Entonces, bueno, de ahí me parece muy relevante este cuestionamiento final de Dacre, que nos deja pensando, Dacre, we are almost there.
I know. It's going to be kind of sad. What are we going to do every week when we're not talking about Dracula? We'll have to talk about other things.
We need to talk about Dracula. There are a lot of we need 6 months to prepare the 6 months.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, look, first of all, everybody have a happy and safe Halloween. Yeah. May the spirits be good to you and you good to the spirits, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. Have a nice one.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Gracias. Hasta pronto. Chao, chao.